There are television shows that get canceled, and everyone sees it coming. The ratings drop, the cast starts taking other work, the network stops promoting it, and eventually the plug is pulled in a way that feels like a slow exhale. And then there are shows like Counting Cars, a show that was pulling in millions of viewers across the globe, a show that had survived 10 full seasons, a show that had turned a Las Vegas custom car garage into one of the most recognizable brands in automotive television history. And then one day in 2021, it was just gone. No press release, no farewell episode, no statement from the History Channel, no explanation from the cast. The show that had become a cornerstone of the network's programming simply stopped producing new episodes, and the silence that followed was louder than any cancellation announcement could have been. Fans were left staring at their screens, asking the same question, with no answer in sight. What actually happened? The truth, when you dig through the court records, the lawsuits, the interviews, and the timeline of events, is far darker and more complicated than anyone expected. It is a story about betrayal from within. It is a story about a man who sat inside the walls of Count's Customs and used the trust placed in him to build a quiet plan that could have destroyed everything Danny Coker had spent his life creating. And it is a story about how the fallout from that betrayal sent shockwaves through the entire operation that did not stop until the cameras were off for good. To understand how it all collapsed, you have to go back to the very foundation of what made Counting Cars work in the first place. Danny Coker, known to millions of fans simply as the Count, was born into the car world. His father worked for the Ford Motor Company, and the love of engines and chrome ran in his blood from childhood. He built Count's Customs in Las Vegas into a genuine operation, a place where classic cars and motorcycles were restored and customized with real skill and real craftsmanship. When the History Channel came knocking after his recurring appearances on Pawn Stars caught fire with audiences, Counting Cars became the natural next step. The show launched in August 2012, and it found its audience immediately. People were drawn not just to the cars, but to the family atmosphere inside the garage. Danny was the creative heart. His crew was the backbone. For 10 seasons, that combination worked. The show ran for 184 episodes. It was, by any measure, a success story. And that success made what happened next all the more devastating. Running a business as busy and visible as Count's Customs requires more than just talented mechanics and artists. It requires someone to manage the money, to handle the accounts, to make sure the taxes get paid and the books stay clean. That administrative layer is the unsexy part of any operation, the part that happens behind the scenes while the cameras capture the glamour of a finished build rolling out of the shop. In 2016, that responsibility fell to a man named Joseph Frontiera. He was hired through a staffing firm called Randstad Professionals and placed in a position of total financial trust inside the company. He had access to the accounts. He managed the money. He was exactly where he needed to be to do maximum damage if his intentions were not what they appeared. According to the civil lawsuit that Count's Customs filed in March of that year, and confirmed by reporting from the Las Vegas Review-Journal, Frontiera did not use that position of trust with integrity. Instead, the lawsuit alleged that he used more than $75,000 of the company's money to fund his personal life. The specifics laid out in the complaint were stunning in their boldness. He allegedly used company funds to cover the down payment on his own personal Range Rover. He reportedly charged personal airline tickets to the business accounts. He was living a lifestyle funded by the hard work of the men and women in that garage, while Danny and his crew were outsourcing cars, pouring hours into builds, and keeping the operation running for the cameras and for their customers. The theft alone would have been serious enough, but Frontiera did not stop there. The lawsuit also revealed that Frontiera failed to pay the company's taxes on time. This was not a small administrative oversight. The Internal Revenue Service issued a penalty of $18,000 against Count's Customs as a direct result of his failure to meet the tax obligations he was responsible for. So not only was money walking out the door through his alleged theft, but the company was simultaneously being hammered by the federal government because of his neglect. The operation was being squeezed from both sides. But even the combined weight of those two revelations was not the most alarming thing that the team uncovered when they finally started pulling back the curtain on what Frontiera had been doing. When Danny and his team dug into the books and began to understand the full scope of what had happened, they found something that turned this from a serious financial crime into something genuinely terrifying. As confirmed in multiple reports citing the civil lawsuit directly, Frontiera had gone to a print shop and ordered signature stamps made without the knowledge or consent of the two people whose names were on them. Those people were Danny Coker himself and his best friend and shop manager Kevin Mack. Think carefully about what that means in practice. A signature stamp is not a forgery that takes effort and skill to reproduce. It is a tool, a piece of rubber and wood that can produce a perfect replica of a signature with a single press. It can be used once, or it can be used 1,000 times. With those stamps in his possession, Frontiera did not need anyone's permission to sign checks. He did not need to copy anyone's handwriting. He could authorize financial transactions in the names of the two most important people in the company as quickly and cleanly as stamping the date on a piece of mail. The $75,000 that the lawsuit identified was the damage they caught. The signature stamps represented the damage that was still possible. With those tools, someone in that position could have drained bank accounts. They could have signed contracts committing the company to financial obligations it knew nothing about. They could have executed loan documents that would have left Danny and Kevin personally liable for debts they had never agreed to. The full potential exposure was not a number that anyone could calculate cleanly because the stamps had not yet been used to their theoretical maximum. But the fact that they existed, the fact that a man sitting inside their business had manufactured the ability to become Danny Coker and Kevin Mack on paper whenever he chose, was a level of calculated premeditation that went far beyond opportunistic theft. This was a deliberate plan to seize control. Counts Customs moved quickly once the discovery was made. The civil lawsuit was filed. Las Vegas Justice Court records show that Frontiera was also charged in a separate case with felony theft. A warrant for his arrest was issued, but the warrant was never served. By that point, according to reporting from the Review-Journal and the attorneys involved, Frontiera had left Nevada entirely and was living in Florida, placing him beyond the immediate reach of the legal process in Las Vegas. His attorney filed a motion to dismiss the civil case. The lawsuit against Randstad Professionals, the hiring firm that had placed him inside the company despite what the lawsuit alleged was a prior history that included embezzlement charges with the previous employer, also ultimately did not produce the outcome Counts Customs was seeking. In the end, reports indicate that Frontiera did pay the $18,000 IRS penalty that his inaction had created. The $75,000 in alleged theft was a different matter entirely. The man at the center of it was gone, and the wound he left behind was deep. Inside the garage, the atmosphere was permanently altered. Trust is the operating system of any small business built on personal relationships, and that operating system had been compromised in the most intimate way imaginable. The people closest to Danny had their identities turned into instruments of potential destruction by someone they had let into their financial house. That kind of violation does not heal quickly, and as the internal damage was being processed, the television family that viewers watched every week was also starting to fracture in ways that the cameras did and did not capture. Scott Jones had been one of the most memorable faces of the early seasons. He was the shop manager and bookkeeper during the first two seasons, the man whose entire job was to keep the finances grounded while Danny's instincts pulled toward every car that caught his eye. Their dynamic was electric and contentious in equal measure, and fans loved watching it play out. Then between Season 2 and Season 3, Scott was gone. The show never gave a formal explanation, and the internet filled the vacuum with speculation, with some rumors pointing fingers at Scott himself and connecting his disappearance to the later embezzlement scandal. Those rumors were false. As confirmed in the third season premiere, Scott had made a personal choice. His wife had just had their youngest son. His roots were in Greenville, Tennessee, and he made the decision to move his family back home. He reportedly opened his own shop there and has lived a quiet, private life ever since, entirely off social media and out of the spotlight. He was not a victim of the scandal. He was a man who chose family over fame before the worst of the trouble even arrived. The next departure that rattled fans was Rolly Sabo, the Hungarian-born detailer whose accent and wild personality made him one of the most entertaining characters the show produced. Rolly left the show, and like Scott's exit, no clean official explanation was ever offered. When asked directly on social media, Rolly himself described it only as a long story and suggested that any return would be up to others as well. The ambiguity fueled its own cycle of rumors. What is documented is that after leaving the show, Rolly built his own detailing business in Las Vegas called Rock and Rolly Custom Detailing and was still pursuing his craft actively enough that in 2019, he traveled to a training facility in Sherbrooke, Quebec, Canada to refine his skills further. The pandemic created real difficulties for his independent operation. By 2025 and into 2026, Rolly had moved on from formal business promotion but remained active on social media, attending car shows in California, and was even spotted at the Mariposa Car Show alongside his former castmate Horny Mike. He was not broken by leaving the show. He just found a different road. The departure that shook the fan base most deeply happened in 2020 during the 10th season. Kevin Mack, the man who had been Danny Coker's closest friend for more than 20 years, the man who had met Danny while riding custom choppers around Las Vegas long before any television executive had ever heard of either of them, disappeared from the screen. He had been the operational heart of the show. As shop manager, he handled the business side of things, while Danny handled the creative and the personality. He had been present in the Frontiera scandal in the most personal possible way, his own signature having been duplicated without his knowledge. Kevin even posted on social media promoting the return of the show in September 2020. But when the episodes aired, he was not in them. The absence of the most important person in Danny's professional life felt to fans like a signal that something fundamental had finally broken. It had not. As confirmed by reporting going into 2025, Kevin Mack did not leave Danny Coker. He did not leave Count's Customs. What he left was the television show. Kevin stepped back from the cameras and returned to what he had always actually been, the man who ran the real business. He remained, and still remains, the day-to-day operational manager of the shop. The friendship that predated the show by over 2 decades survived everything that the Frontiera situation threw at it and survived the pressures of a decade under the lights. Kevin simply decided that the shop needed him more than the production did, and he acted accordingly. The show lost its second most recognizable face. The business kept its most important behind-the-scenes operator. By the time the show filmed its final episodes, Danny himself was fighting a battle that had nothing to do with the garage. Fake advertisements had begun circulating online, and they were convincing enough to cause real damage. These ads claimed that Danny was leaving Counting Cars to promote and sell his own line of CBD oil products, complete with screenshots of him from actual Fox News appearances to make the fabrication look credible. Danny has been explicit about how far the damage spread. Speaking publicly, he recalled that people he knew personally called him to say they had ordered the product after seeing him promoting it and never received anything. His name was being used to defraud his own fans, and there was nothing he could do to stop the spread fast enough. He had to engage legal resources just to fight the false advertising online. And this is where the relationship with the History Channel finally fractured beyond repair. In Danny's own words, confirmed in published interviews, he stated clearly that the network and he had a falling out over the CBD scandal. The fake advertisements, the bad publicity they generated, the reputational damage to the show's star, and the network's response to all of it combined to create a rupture that did not mend. A television show is a partnership between talent and network, and when that partnership stops working in both directions, the show stops working. The History Channel never issued a formal cancellation statement. They simply did not commission another season. After 184 episodes across 10 years, Counting Cars went dark with no ceremony and no explanation offered to the millions of people who had watched it. What remained when the cameras stopped coming was actually more durable than the production had been. Count's Customs never closed. Danny Coker never stopped building cars. Ryan Evans, the painter whose artwork had been a visual centerpiece of the show for years, remained in the shop. Horny Mike, whose 3D printed custom creations had given the show some of its most memorable moments, kept working. Kevin Mack stayed in the building, managing the operation from behind the scenes, where he had always been most effective. The museum attached to the shop continued offering free tours, and the public could still walk in and see the work being done. By 2025, Danny had announced appearances on the car show circuit, including the Syracuse Nationals, connecting directly with the fans who had followed the show from its beginning. The Count's Vamp Bar and Grill, Danny's vampire-themed music venue, where his band Count 77 performed, announced its closure with a final day set for June 29, 2025. That closing felt symbolic to many fans, another landmark from the Counting Cars era stepping back from public life. But the shop itself absorbed that loss the same way it absorbed the